Well, it's 1 minute early. You think it's okay if I start? Okay. Well, good morning. I am Jen Mason. I am your worship associate this morning. I welcome each of you sitting in our sanctuary and those who have joined us online. In Michel Legrave's words, we all come to religious community from many paths with diverse needs. If you have come here seeking comfort, may your pain be soothed. If you've come here looking for answers, may you find new questions. If you've come here seeking purpose and a good microphone, may your call be awakened. If you've come here hoping to build a new way, may the path open before you. There are a great many things that I have not experienced. I don't know what it's like to feel threatened because of the skin color or my religion. I don't know what it's like to be openly gay. I don't know what it's like to be in prison. I don't know what it's like to be homeless and unsheltered. I just don't know. I have never experienced any of those things. I can, however, gain enough of an understanding of each of those because I can listen and because I've experienced many other things that has given me the ability to empathize and fills me with compassion. Stretch yourself. Imagine many different experiences. Begin where you are and listen to other people. Learn from others. Entertain strangers in your midst and understand others beyond your current reality. Coretta Scott King states, the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassion actions of its members. This new day dawns for us all. Let us worship together. We will begin by lighting our chalice, a symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this church today. Today, the chalice will be lit by our Chet Smith. There we go.
One way or another.
That's right.
We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning.
These covenant words are from Esther Hurlbut. It is not always easy to find love at the center. So for today, we gather in covenant to celebrate the reality that love is at the core of our beings, and that love will guide us if we open ourselves to the challenges which love requires of us. May we accept this challenge with dignity and grace. Let us recite our covenant together.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
Well, I tried to find a really special book for Message of All Ages. I couldn't find it. But I read and I studied. And today's topic focuses on homelessness. So I decided to read as much as I could about the issues and challenges facing both folks that are homeless and communities in which they reside. My first search was for videos, so I watched over 25 YouTube videos. One video was called The Home Stretch. It's a documentary film that received a 2016 Emmy Award. Along with this film, as many other videos and documents, I learned about the challenges faced every day by those who are unhomed, with ages ranging from children, single parents, to the elderly and disabled. I discovered that some cities and their residents are very angry towards the homeless. They are opposed to people camping on public land. This includes parks as well as city sidewalks. Some cities enforce rules against this, and as a result, they fine the homeless and take them to jail because they have no place other than public lands on which to camp. I found a church in California that took on this problem and created their own shelter. They provide a variety of services, including bus tickets to take people back to their families who live far away. They provide a pathway to rehab and mental health services, as well as a safe place to sleep all night, shower, and eat. This program was not subsidized by any government service, but rather totally supported by church members. I studied services available in Collin County and expanded to other areas. I found that homelessness is not just a U.S. problem, but rather a worldwide problem, ranging all over from England to South Africa to Australia to India. And I discovered that homelessness is increased significantly over the last several years. In the United States, it is found throughout our country, all over, from Alaska to North Carolina to New York to Texas. And it's caused by many, many situations, not just mental illness and addiction. Inflation and affordable housing contribute to the cause, as well as immigration. Many families rent small hotel rooms by the week, but that is not a good solution for them. I also discovered that public schools are a blessing as they support the children throughout the day and assure that they have good food. I found that the range of homeless challenges to be huge, from accessing food, shelter, water, electricity, clothing, personal hygiene, which includes clean clothes, safety, keeping families together, loneliness, weather, and the list goes on and on. I read a personal perspective by a man named Roger Wade, who's been homeless for 15 years. He describes himself as being homeless, sober, drug-free, but somewhat mentally impaired. He highlights stumbling blocks that he's faced, and one he included was the lack of transportation to access essential services and to maintain his appearance and hygiene, including haircuts, shoes, and decent clothes. And he explained that if a homeless man does not have a stable and safe home that works for him, all of the help given to him from well-meaning volunteers, counselors, and staff will just become words written on the wind. I came to appreciate home. Home represents more than shelter. It includes stability, belonging, social connections, and I realize that I am so very fortunate to have a home, and if you have these luxuries, you probably will also want to count your blessings.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. Well, first I want to thank you. I'm honored to be here with you this morning. I noticed in my preparation you just recently celebrated your 50th anniversary. Having just celebrated my recently 50th wedding anniversary, I know the dedication and sacrifice it takes to reach that milestone. I chose the reading this morning, Matthew 25, verse 40, based on my outlook that every organization has a tone, a sense to it, almost a personality that is based in the beliefs of its collective participants. And I'm here to talk to you this morning about the Plano Overnight Warming Station a little bit later. But I believe that this passage characterizes this organization and how we try to project ourselves to our guests. So let me read Matthew 25, 40. And Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Thank you. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm here to tell you about the Plano Overnight Warming Station. I probably should just go directly to questions because I think Jen covered about everything I was going to talk about when she introduced me, but I'll go back over it to refresh your mind so you can ask the questions when they come. The Plano Overnight Warming Station is a unincorporated nonprofit volunteer organization comprised of about 350 volunteers from across southeast Collin County, most of which are in Plano. We've been in operation for 7 years. What I hope to cover in the next 10 minutes, basically, is how do we operate, what are we doing, why are we doing it, and what's the big message behind the Plano Overnight Warming Station. So I'm going to start with a quote. We have an appreciation dinner for our volunteers every year. We invite local notaries, famous people. One was the assistant city manager of the city of Plano, Sam Greif, if you happen to know Sam. And he spoke at one of our recent appreciation dinners. And he's the head of the police department and the fire department. So there's some weight to his comments here. He said it is his belief that the volunteers in the Plano Overnight Warming Station have saved more lives than the average policeman or fireman save in their careers. Now, this is not apples and oranges. There's one fireman or one policeman, and we got 300 volunteers. So it's not really a fair fight. But it speaks to why we have the Plano Overnight Warming Station. As mentioned by Jen earlier, I retired in 2014, and like all retirees, you begin to look around, how are you going to fill your day? Watching television has its merits, but gets tiresome after a very short time. And I'm not a handyman, so building things and making things, it's not one of my talents. I suffer mightily at that. But I do like to organize things, people mostly. And I joined the Collin County Homeless Coalition. And every year we would have a planning session where we'd say, what are the greatest needs for the homeless in southeast Collin County? And every year, the same item was number one. It says we have no place to shelter the unsheltered homeless during dangerously cold nights. So I thought about that and I said, I think there are more churches in Plano than there are homeless people, unsheltered homeless people in Plano. Why don't we just get every church to adopt one homeless person and we solve the problem? Well, clearly that's not a very practical solution, but it did cause a couple of people that I mentioned this to come together, and we tried to figure out how do we solve this problem, given that we literally have no budget, no facilities, and nothing other than the warmth of our hearts, so to speak. But we unintentionally got the right people together. They represented several fairly large churches, faith organizations in southeast Collin County, and we started meeting and talking about how we solve this problem. There's a real issue here from the standpoint if you can't buy a building to use it for 25 nights a year, right? Economically makes no sense. The other problem we have is our events are completely unscheduled. We only have an event when the weather is freezing and dangerous, and we don't know, except for about 6 days of weather forecast ahead, when these are going to be. So how do you approach a building owner and say, hey, would you mind donating your building for random nights during the months of January and February? And of course, they'd all say, well, we really can't do that. We need something longer lasting. And I'll share another interesting response we got. We went to several of the faith organizations that were represented by members of our committee. And we said to them, here's what we're looking for, a place to hold a warming station during dangerous nights. Could we use your gymnasiums? And they said, almost universally, sure, unless we have a basketball game that night. Didn't really work for us. So finally, we churned and churned, and we hooked up with the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army said, sure, you can use our facility right down here on 14th Street, just south of where we are now, more or less. And that was marriage made in heaven, as they say. Worked out well. The Salvation Army supplied the facility. The volunteer groups supplied the staffing. We had contributions. We never really actively sought contributions, which I find fascinating. We've been running for 7 years. We have zero marketing budget. The contributions we get primarily come from our sponsoring faith organizations. But I'll spend more time on that later. And we created, I'm a physicist by training, a critical mass of volunteers and facilities and resources. And we were able, that year, in the November 14th, 2018, we opened for the first time. And there's an interesting story behind it, because at the time we were putting this together, there was an ordinance in Plano that literally said, you cannot hold an overnight facility for homeless people greater than 15 people. It didn't make any sense to us. So we engaged with the city council, with the planning committee. We put our plans together. We went to the planning committee and said, hey, we'd like to work on your approval for extending that number to 50 homeless people. We think we could make that work. And they began working with us, and they said, well, why don't you make it 75? I said, oh, okay. So we did. Then we had to go to the Plano City Council. The Plano City Council meeting was November 14th, 2018, the very night we had planned to open. So we had some of our members at the council meeting, some of our members at the Salvation Army, in a long line of homeless people waiting to be admitted. And we said to the group that was waiting, please come into the vestibule, wait here. We have to get approval from the city council before we can open our doors, but don't worry, they're meeting right now. So we're on the phone, we're serving coffee and cookies. And then our presenter gets up in front of the city council, much to the credit of the city council of Plano, and said, we have planning approval. We'd like you to approve a plan for us to allow 50 guests to come to our facility. You know what they said? Why don't you make it 100? So we did. And opened the doors, and we've been operating ever since. So that's who we are. Have I been pushing this backwards while I was talking? Oh, okay. So Plano Overnight Warming Station, that's our goal, saving lives, protecting unsheltered homeless from very bad weather. This chart shows our history. I know it's a little hard to read. You don't need to really read it. Each vertical bar represents one of our openings. The height of the bar is the number of people that stayed with us as guests that night. You might notice a trend. What was happening is every year our average attendance, and our peak attendance for that matter, was increasing by roughly 25%. Not a good thing when you're in our business. You'd like to see that line going the other way. But we ran out of space in the 22-23 year. The maximum capacity at the Salvation Army was about 125 people plus our staff, which is roughly 30 people. That's the maximum we could handle. So we were desperately running out of space. So the other amazing part of our story, if you believe in destiny in a sense, the East Plano Islamic Center came to us and said, we have a very large gym. You could use our space. We'd be happy to have you, and we have vans that you can use to bring the guests back and forth to wherever they come from. And I said, yeah, but what about your basketball games? And they said, gee, Now, keep this in your mind. Gee, we think saving lives is more important than playing basketball. That's a true story. So that's our history. We moved to the East Plano Islamic Center, EPIC, I'm going to call them from now on, in the 23-24 year, and also now 24-25 year. They have been gracious, kind, and about as generous as you could imagine. They provided their vans, they provide drivers. And speaking as a Christian, I'm truly amazed by the dedication of the Muslims that attend that mosque. You go there on a Friday, and there's literally 4,000 people coming and going. And the other thing, as an organizer of volunteer events, there's a couple of kinds of volunteers. Literally, I'll cut to the chase. Those that show up and those that don't. You know the story. And so we've managed that over time. In fact, we organized our whole approach to assume that a lot of our volunteers aren't going to show up all the time. We know that's sort of a characteristic of the business, so we organize that way. But the difference when we're working with the Muslim people from EPIC is when they say 80 people are going to show up, 100 people show up. It's our math and completely reversed. More people show up than sign up. So it's been truly a pleasure working with EPIC. Now, let me tell you about how we operate. We have designed our programs to be suburban friendly, because we know people in suburbia travel, have other commitments, maybe playing basketball, like nights we're going to open. So we designed for that. Right? The way we've organized is we have currently 7 teams, each based on a faith organization. We have events. Every event is assigned. The teams are numbered 1 through 7. Yeah? Every event is assigned to a team in sequence. So no team serves more than once in a row. Right? You got to wait for 7 more catastrophically cold nights before you serve again. Right? So that helps lower the pain threshold. We also staff each team with roughly 40 people, although we only need roughly 20 people for one event. And that's the design point. It says some of these people aren't going to be able to make the event, so we'll overstaff. Right? That's worked very well for us. We have a weather team now, works with a emergency management group from the city of Plano to look at the weather. Our criteria is if it's going to be less than 32 degrees on any hourly forecast overnight, not the average forecast, any point in an hour is 32 degrees or below, we'll open. Also, if there's a 50% or higher probability of precipitation that night, we'll open if the weather gets 40 degrees or below. Does that make sense? If it's going to rain, we raise the bar. And that's the way we've operated. You saw from the chart, we have an average of 22 to 23 events a year. Not a lot. If you got 7 teams, you're asking people to serve 3 times a year, once every 7 events. Something happened in the last couple of years to change those dynamics. We started having, in North Dallas, we started having weather that stayed cold, not just overnight, all day long. So the city of Plano came to us and said, hey, if we pay the bill for the daily openings, would you open during the day and stay open 24 hours and not close down until the weather warms up? And foolishly, we said, sure. And since that time, this was back in, I think, 22, 23, we've had continuous 7 or 8 day periods where we never close. And that gets a little bit rough and raw, as you can imagine. But we had a brainstorm, a brilliant thought. Our original thought was we'll take one team and we'll assign them for 24 hours of coverage. Right? And then the next team takes the next lousy idea. Nobody wanted to stay up for 24 hours. Right? So we had trouble recruiting for the following day. So we just changed the approach. Right? Brilliant stroke of genius by somebody. Now we have a team runs the evening, another team runs the next day, and so forth and so on. That's worked out much better. People show up, they're actually awake. They stay awake for the whole event. The other thing I want to mention that doesn't come across when we say overnight warming station, everybody thinks if I volunteer, I got to spend the night. That's not how we operate. We actually, our peak load period is from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. That's when all the guests show up. They register, we check them in, we give them bedding, we give them a cot, we feed them a meal, they have some entertainment. Then they go to bed by 10 o'clock, and the volunteers, almost all the volunteers leave. We only staff overnight with 2 volunteers, 2 police officers, and 1 paramedic, and Epic supplies 1 staff member because it's their facility. And if there are operational issues like turn the heat up or turn the heat down or turn the lights on. The first night we ran, nobody could figure out how to turn the lights off. So our poor guests had to sleep with the lights on all night long. But we solved that problem. So that's kind of a track record of accidental success, I think, for the most part. Whenever we've run into some difficulties, somehow we've figured out a way to work through that. We have an interesting challenge coming up this coming year. Ramadan is the holiest of the Muslim periods. And I didn't know the characteristics of Ramadan until I got involved with Epic here. I thought it was like our Easter, which bounces between March and April, and that's about it. Ramadan, in case you don't know, is a 4-week period that rolls further and further into the year. Like when we started, Ramadan was in April. This year it was in March. Next year it's going to be in February. That's going to be a problem for us. So we're looking for a site that can accommodate 150 cots for 4 weeks from the middle of February to the middle of March. And that's going to be a challenge for us for the next 5 or 6 years as it rolls through our peak warming periods. But that's just an example of the kinds of things we run into when you're running ad hoc volunteer affairs. These are the foundational faith organizations that we work with. It's, as you can see, a mix of many Protestant and Catholic faiths and the Muslim community, Epic. They each run a team. They each have assigned a team leader who is responsible for their events. They recruit for the events, staff the events, organize the events, and run the events. And if they need help from any other team, we have what we call open call staffing. They send an email out, and we get the volunteers we need. There's an interesting story. If you focus on the time frame here, we ran this through the pandemic. Right? Now, when we were planning for this, we said there's no way in the world these volunteers are going to come out on a freezing cold night with lousy road conditions in the middle of a pandemic. What person in their right mind would do that? So we went and got some funding, $70,000, so we could hire people to staff the events because the volunteers weren't going to show up. Well, I'm here to tell you, every event was fully staffed by volunteers. And we were able to use that $70,000 to buy a shower trailer, which now is an additional service we had offered to our guests because these volunteers show up. So I'm here to tell you, it's my opinion that the greatest people in Southeast Collin County are members of the POWS organization. They show up. We can count on them. In fact, Mr. Nichols in the audience here has also been a very helpful individual. He and his group have provided meals, breakfast, warm breakfast for our guests on many occasions. So thanks to Doug Nichols as well. And everything I've said here has been accomplished by a committee of very dedicated volunteers. The other characteristic of this organization that is unique, we do not exist. We are the Brigadoon of volunteer organizations. We don't exist until the weather turns cold. We have no offices. We have no paid staff. There is no marketing. Literally, you can't send us a message. You could send me an email, but you can't email us something because we have no address. You can't give us directly, and Jen knows this now, you can't give us directly a check because we don't have any bank accounts because we are not a legal entity. That's by design, by the way. Our overhead costs are literally zero. Right? And that's because we rely on Epic, for example, as our hosts. We use their bank accounts. If we ever have a meeting, we hold it at Epic. Well, you have lots of meetings, actually. We hold them at Epic. So the contribution Epic is making to our efforts is large and very appreciated. So just from a volunteer point of view, as I said, we've got over 300 of them. We roughly, I said 25 there. Strangely enough, that number has gone down if you're counting only nights, but up if you count nights and days. This last year, for example, we had 30 events if you count day events different than night events, right? Even though they're sequential. So you could say this year we had 30 events, for example. And that's basically it. That's my story. That's Powell's. I'm going to give this to you before I do any more damage. Oh, you want to put up questions? I've been told we can field some questions if you would like to ask any at this point. Yes, ma'am. Well, we have to speak in Arabic, so it's very difficult. No, that's a joke. It's not true. They are just like everybody else. We call meetings, they send emails, we reply to the emails, vice versa. They actually approached us. We didn't seek them out. They had heard about us. First thing they did was form a team. They started working with us at the Salvation Army. And then they began to see the challenges we were facing. They came to us and said, we think you could use our gym. So, and then there was a lot of concern, as you might expect from the volunteers. Do I have to wear head coverings? You know, can I, are there any other? And the answer to this question is no. There's only one thing that we've made an accommodation for because we are in the gym of the mosque, which is different than being in the sanctuary of the mosque. If we went in to pray, all bets are off, but we're in the gym. They said the only thing they ask are, you respect the facility like you would any other facility, of course. And when we have meals, because the Muslims serve the meals in some cases and potentially eat them, we follow some of the dietary restrictions, like we don't bring in pork, as an example. That's it. Everything else is as normal as you could imagine. I've never taken my shoes off, and I've been in that mosque for 24 hours straight as a testament to that, and there's no problem. The only other thing, very hard for me to do, is there's a custom that the Muslim women do not like to touch men. Right? So when I first started, every time I went, I'd go like this, and literally you see them flinch involuntarily, right? And then they shake your hand until somebody rapped me on the head and said, dummy, they just, in the Muslim faith, don't like the women touching men. So just say hi, don't shake your hand, their hand. The men are fine. But even Muslim men shaking Muslim women's hands, I think, unless they're married. But other than that, it has been very, very easy working with the mosque. Yes, ma'am. Well, we have collected funds from two sources. First, the city of Plano. I got a shout out to them. They have provided funding. After we were in business for about 3 years, they said, oh, this place looks serious. They're actually solving a problem for the city. We ought to help them out. So they committed. The first 3 years, 40% of our budget was security. We had to hire security guards to watch the place. They now provide 2 police officers and a paramedic all the time for all events. And they pay for the day events if we have a day event that they declare because they declare a weather emergency. Other than that, the faith organizations primarily contribute money. Our volunteers, in an unsolicited fashion, also donate money. Our annual budget runs in the neighborhood of $50,000. It's primarily for food, but in the beginning we used it to buy cots and to buy bedding material and other supplies we need to run. We have 3 storage containers, if you know what those are. They're in the parking lot at the mosque. And what happens when we call an event, the volunteers sign up to do this setup. We go unlock the pods, drag all the cots, all the bedding material, all the supplies we need into the gym, and set up the sleeping areas and the eating areas and the registration areas and the clothes closet and so forth and so on. So that's where we get most of our funds. Yes. I don't really know for sure. We have a website that they can use. We have a phone number they can call. We have many people that are active in the homeless community. When we first started, we did a lot of work to get the news out. Now there's a lot of word of mouth going on. Plus, every time we have an event, we register the homeless. And you may be surprised to know almost all of them have cell phones. So we get their cell phone numbers. So we can communicate to them. We text them, for example. So there are many ways. Plus, we put posters at times in various obvious places around downtown Plano that says, if you want to go to the shelter, if you wait at the DART station, we'll pick you up. If you want to walk there, you're free to do that. It's a hike, but it's still warm when you get there. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to be very careful here. I am not a fan of our current governor at all. Thursday of this week, we met with the whole POWS team, management team, met with the imam and the resident scholar and several members of the congregation. What they're planning to do is build a subdivision near the city of Josephine in unincorporated territory, mostly in Collin County. They have as their lawyer, strangely enough, I found this peculiar, the gentleman who represented Paxton when he was being impeached. A wise choice when you think about what's going on here. It's my perspective that the governor has unfairly characterized this effort. There is no Sharia law involved. There's no intention to exclude people, although they freely admit there's going to be a mosque right in the middle of the development. There's going to be a Muslim school in the development, although there's a public school within walking distance. Anybody is free to buy a home once they get the plots out. It has to be approved by the zoning people. You can't sell a plot until it's approved, and they haven't gotten that far yet, strangely enough. There's no development going on. They're following all the laws of the county and the state. So what's happening here as a result of what the state of Texas under the governor is doing appears to me to be patently unfair, unjustified, and borders on bullying. You can publish that if you want. Truly, I am ashamed to be a Texan. That's truth.
As our worship time this morning draws to a close, it's time now to extinguish our chalice. Please join me now in reciting these words.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May God bless you with discomfort at each answer's half-truths and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger and at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and turn their pain to joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done.